Hello, in today's video, we are going to talk about vaccines. So let's have a review on the immune system before we talk about vaccines. So as what we have talked about in class, when foreign pathogens invade us, the immune system triggers a series of responses. So the first set of responses that are triggered are called the innate immune responses, which will in turn trigger the adaptive immune responses. So the adaptive immune responses include specific T and B cells fighting the pathogens, and some of them being able to record information about the pathogens. So what this will do is it will create a memory of what the invaders look like and how to best fight them. So when the same pathogen invades the body again, our body is prepped for the next battle by reacting faster and can fight off the pathogen more efficiently. However, because our body takes time to learn how to respond to pathogens and to build up defenses, if the body is too weak or young, it can result in death before the body develops an immune response if the pathogen is particularly severe. Even if the body is not too weak, if we're dealing with an infectious disease, it can result in, and also if the infectious disease is not contained, it can lead to an outbreak, an epidemic, or a pandemic, like the one we are in right now. And this can be very costly, both socially and economically. So a group of scientists have been thinking whether there will be a better way to develop immunity against a pathogen. And they found a solution, which is vaccines. So vaccines basically is a substance that causes a response in the body that protects it against a specific disease. And it can be injected or taken orally. And how do vaccines work? So again, it's the same immune response like when the real pathogen attacks. So vaccines basically contain small amounts or pieces of live or killed pathogen that causes disease. So vaccines cause an immune response from the body. So again, it will be the innate and then the adaptive immune responses. And the immune system is able to remember the exposure to the pathogen and can defend the body against it. So a vaccinated person has immunity against the disease if they get vaccinated specifically for that disease or against that disease. So what are some types of vaccines out there? So the first one would be the live attenuated vaccines. These vaccines contain living microbes that have been weakened. This will result in a strong immune response. Some examples of these would be measles and chickenpox. And the cons of these live attenuated vaccines would be, number one, they're difficult to make. Number two, because they are quite strong, people with weak immune system cannot take it. So scientists therefore developed something called inactivated vaccines, which contain microbes that have been killed with heat, chemicals, or radiation. And this will result in a weaker response from immune system, which means booster shots are needed. So some examples of these would be hepatitis A and rabies. And keep in mind though, these inactivated vaccines, again, they do not have long-lasting immunity, and that's why booster shots are needed. And next, we have the subunit vaccines, which contain only specific pieces of microbes and can result in a, again, weaker immune response. And these specific pieces of microbes usually are the antigens found on the pathogens. So for example, usually would be proteins or sugars found on these microbes. And some examples of these kind of vaccines will be hepatitis B. And lastly, we have the toxoid vaccines. So these vaccines contain inactivated toxins from certain types of bacteria. And this will result in a weaker immune system response. So again, booster shots are needed for these kind of vaccines. So an example of these vaccines will be the tetanus shots. So how does a vaccine get from the lab to you? So usually it would start with a research step. So scientists need to get information about the pathogen. And potential vaccine manufacturers would test different possible approaches to building a vaccine. And next, it will be the preclinical trials and testing. So at this stage, lab and animal tests will show whether a vaccine could be safe and effective for humans. Next, we have the clinical trials, which will check whether it's safe and effective in humans. So this is the step where healthy volunteers will be recruited to receive either a placebo, so no vaccine, or the vaccine to see if it's safe and effective in humans. And then we're going to move on to the approval step once the clinical trials, once there are a lot of data indicating that it's safe and effective. Then we'll move on to the approval step. So the Health Canada will give final approval for the vaccine by approving the vaccine's stated effectiveness and safety for proper use of the drug. And they will also inspect the manufacturing facilities to make sure it's safe. And also they will conduct a separate lab analysis of that vaccine. So they will not solely rely on the pre-existing data. They will also conduct separate lab analysis. So, and then afterwards, after the vaccine is approved, Health Canada will continue to monitor the vaccine safety and effectiveness. So vaccines, what are some benefits of vaccination? So number one, it can help protect people against deadly diseases and those that can cause permanent damage. And also, it can help stop the spread of disease by developing something called herd immunity. And it can help stop an outbreak from turning into an epidemic or a pandemic. So what is the effectiveness of certain vaccines? So let's take a look at the measles vaccines over here. So back in 1980, the total number of reported cases was at 4.2 million. And later on in 2014, after vaccines have been promoted and babies have been vaccinated when they were born, the total number of reported cases with measles have dropped to around 267,000 cases. And so the percent decrease in cases are at 93.6%. So the measles vaccine is quite effective in lowering these cases and providing immunity. So previously I talked about herd immunity and vaccines. What exactly is herd immunity? Well, herd immunity is the population immunity and is the indirected protection from an infectious disease that happens when the population is immune, number one, either through vaccination or the brutal way immunity developed through previous infection. So some example would be, again, herd immunity against measles and measles vaccination. And so that's it for today's lecture. Please, after you, hopefully you've been taking some notes along the way, and please answer these two questions, which are also indicated on your notes. And for tomorrow's class, we are going to do some activities on vaccines, and we're going to start with the discussion on these questions. So see you tomorrow. Bye.